Good morning. I'm of the firm belief that anything related to the music industry shouldn't start until at least noon or 1. 9:30 is absurd. The people who planned this shit. I was one of those. I'd like to welcome you to South by Southwest, the Regional Media and Music Conference. My name is Louis Black. I'm the editor of the Austin Chronicle. I'm one of the people who planned and put this together. We'd like to I guess, welcome everybody to Austin, welcome everybody to the conference. This is our first time, so lots of things are bound to go wrong. We hope you'll bear with us. We're kind of learning as we go along, and we're kind of a little afraid as we go along. But so far, we're overwhelmed by the response. The registration's probably doubled what we expected. People have come in from all over, not only the region, but the country. And I think it's indicative not of us. I think we're in the right place at the right time. I think it's regional music in general. I think it's Texas music. I think it's music from this whole area, and I think everybody's kind of ready to watch us, see what we're going to do, and especially to listen to us and listen to the music. And the idea behind this conference is the music. It's not. It's what we can do to, I guess, to make a living on it. Joe Nick said that the motto of the conference should be "Don't give up your day job." What we probably want to do is kind of work on ways so sooner or later we can give up our day jobs. There's a whole lot of people to thank, and I'll do that real briefly. The 6 people most responsible for putting this together were Nick Barbaro, Roland Swenson, Ed Ward, Bruce Sheehan, and Louis J. Myers, as well as myself. And we were inspired, and we owe a lot to Mark Josephson and Joel Weber from the New Music Center in New York, who essentially came down here and said, hey, let's do a regional conference. And then at some point, because they were so busy and there were so many other things going on, really couldn't do it, and we decided to pick up the ball. But it was really their idea, and we kind of just carried it through, and they've been terrifically helpful. Mark's down here has just been incredible in terms of the kind of guidance and advice he's given us, which, I mean, it's moving because it's supposed to be a real cutthroat business, and here it is his idea, and we're kind of running with it, and instead of any hostility or jealousy, it's just been terrific. And so we owe Mark a tremendous debt of thanks. Ernie Gamage has been incredibly helpful through this whole thing, and I'm going to leave somebody out, so you better remind me. Joe Nick Patoski has been really super. You like it? And there's been a large number of other people. It's been real weird. We're looking at over 170 musical acts on Thursdays, Saturday, and Sunday. We're looking at numerous speakers. When we started planning this, we were going to do workshops. We're going to have one moderator, and then the other thing was going to be in a workshop format because we really didn't know who would come. And the response within the music industry has just been so tremendous, and most of those workshops have now evolved into panels because there's enough people who have pay their dues, in these different fields who can talk and give us some insight and professional insight and help on this thing. So we're really kind of thrilled with the way everything's been going. But it's kind of like a beast that's gotten a little bit out of hand, and we don't know which way it's gonna flip next. So if something wild goes on, we'll do our best to handle it, and we're doing our best to kind of maintain through the whole thing. But what's going to happen today is that when I'm done speaking, which will be soon, Joe Nick Patoski is going to introduce our opening speaker, Huey Mo, and then after Huey Mo, Carlos Grasso is going to speak, and then we're going to have the opening the Timbuk 3 panel, in which they're going to discuss the Timbuk 3 story, essentially how a local band broke nationally, how a regional band made it, which I think is probably of interest to all of us. We're not looking for Lana Turner, walking into the drugstore and finding a star, but the kind of band that paid its dues, that played in small clubs and bars, and how that managed to evolve to a national act, because I think that's of interest to all of us. And then we'll break for a little while, and this afternoon there'll be, I think you've all seen a list of workshops that'll be offered until about 5:30 or 6. At 6 o'clock from 6 to 8, there's a cocktail party at Headliners East on 6th Street. It's just down there, 3 blocks. It's a real nice bar. We'll do a cocktail party there, and then starting at 8, we have showcases at 13 clubs with somewhere between 5 and 8 bands playing each club, and some of the best bands in this whole region, and we think it's going to be a terrific night. Then tomorrow we have an opening panel. After the panel, we're going to have gospel singers, the Golden Echoes from Austin, who are just terrific, and I think it's going to be one of the musical highlights of the whole weekend. And then after that, we have softball and barbecue in the afternoon, and then tomorrow, and that Sunday night, we also have, again, at 5 or 6 clubs, we have showcases with another 5 to 8 bands. So I think there's enough music for everybody, and hopefully this will prove to be informative and interesting enough for everybody. And again, we'd like to thank you all for coming. We hope everything works. If you have any problems, find me or find Roland, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you very much.
One of the things that really warms my heart the most about seeing everybody out here this week is that it's, for the first time, it seems like, I've seen on a mass scale, it seems like that what is going on musically here in Texas is finally connecting with the powers that be in Los Angeles and New York with the major record labels. And there's no better opportunity for someone that wants to get a start in this business to be here this weekend and get seen or heard or learn something and connect with these majors. It's kind of like a grassroots movement, I guess you could call it, and I'm quite impressed by this. It's been for 15, 20 years, people have been kicking themselves wondering how do we meet these people without packing up the car and the family and moving out to California. While it may seem like kind of a new phenomenon here in Austin, it's been going on for years and years, in particular in Texas, and no person has made the connection between local talent and major league business, as well as the person that's going to speak next. He's a true survivor in the music business on both a regional scale and a national scale. He's been picking up talent all around the Gulf Coast for the last 30 years and shaping it up and shipping it out and getting gold records for it. He's worked with such people as, well, I think anyone that's been anyone in Texas music in the last 20 or 30 years, people like Doug Song and B.J. Thomas, Freddie Fender, Rockin' Sidney, Jerry Lee Lewis, goes on and on, Roy Head. He's a walking encyclopedia. And I think while a lot of us are dealing with new acts and new music and trying to figure out how to get to the labels, Huey P. Meaux is a man that can shed some light on how to get in touch. He's been doing this for years and years. He's an old pro. He's a walking treasure of Texas music history. He's a pretty damn smart person too. And I think there's no other better way to kick off this conference than a few words from the man who we lovingly know as the Crazy Cajun, Mr. Huey P. Meaux.
Yeah, it's early in the morning for a musician to get up. Glad to see y'all here. It's in the middle of the night for me. I'm a little hoarse. They asked me to be a speaker. I ain't no speaker, but I love people who love music, so that's why I'm here today. And evidently you love music, or you wouldn't get up this early in the morning either, hearing old Coonaz from Louisiana say good morning. Joe Nick, and of course, I'd like to again thank the people that put this organization together. Austin's always on the map, you know. I don't care if I go to Europe or wherever I go, Austin is, tell me about Austin, Huey. What the hell can you tell about Austin? People are big-hearted, they kind, they love everybody, and that's all I can tell them, you know. And they love music. So that last weekend I was here, Doug Hanners had, an old friend of mine, had a great success with his record collectors convention, and if he's around, we'd like to tell him hi and thank you for what he's doing again for Austin and the state of Texas. And of course, Louis Black and all of them for what they're doing here, they took a big gamble. I mean, a big gamble. Either they stayed in town, next week they'd be gone if this thing didn't work. And it takes a lot to venture out in this whole world blindfolded and, you know, trial and error. And it's rough, it's the challenge and it's the game that counts. So that, took this gum out of my mouth, man, might not work. Anyway, I want to see my friends here from Sugar Hill Studios. I gotta give myself a little plug. My friends over here from Houston. Let's give them a big hand. They came all the way from over there. Where's Barry Levitz? What's the other Barry? Still sleeping, huh? We got to watch him, the sleeper. Okay. I don't know how to make speeches. All I know is to tell you the facts and the trials and errors I've been through. I started in the record business. My daddy was the old Louisiana Cajun, was raised in the swamps. As you can tell, my English teacher committed sideways early. She gave up on me. And I started out in a little town called Winnie, Texas. We moved there when I was a boy. And my daddy played accordion and occasional accordion, and smoked in Picayune cigarettes. I'm still alive today, I don't know why. And it was very strong. But I guess I've had music popped in my ear because he was like a typical old musician. When he got lonesome, he'd just look out the window and play his accordion. And the accordion I learned over the years, if you put your ear to it, you can hear just about any instrument coming out of an accordion that there is. You can hear guitar parts, you can hear horn parts, Otis Redding, if you remember Mr. Pitiful, you hear triplets and his trumpets, and they all, some kind of way, I got a feeling I picked up a lot of that from my old papa's accordion player. Maybe not, but he loved music. And I was a disc jockey in Port Arthur, Texas for years. Had an occasion show then at 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. We worked in the fields the rest of the time. But I think it was a great asset to me because I learned the rhythm and the beat of things that people love to hear. And I also learned as I grew older that I tried to sing, by the way, and they threw me out, so I couldn't do that. It was terrible. I put out a record, I got drunk on, I had to get drunk to sing. And it's so bad, my friends in Louisiana just played that for April Fool's Day every year, you know. But I learned then I wasn't a singer, I needed to get out here and do something that I loved so I could be next to music. I knew my heart was next to music and I had to be part of it some kind of way or the other. So that's how I learned how to be in a record business. Being a disc jockey, I learned the beat and the pattern that people, the rhythm, felt and what they requested, whether it was in Cajun, whether it was country or rock and roll. It's a feeling. And if the feelings ain't there, it ain't there. And it always said there's only 2 international languages, you know, and one of them is music. It has to have feelings making love to your favorite lover. Whereas in Latin, it's only 2 that cross all the borders, you know. So they hold hands, and that's why they always become great. I started off by selling records in the trunk of my car. I had a little post office box. The old post office box was contained made out of wood. I was a barber in Winnie, Texas, and on Monday was my day off. And I'd record records. I'd buy a Central Bug tape, $1.98. I'd go to the radio station and make their record and put it out. And we're just going to glance over it, and John Wheat and University got the rest of it, Joe Nick. He tells all the stories anyway. So I would go to Mondays and make the record shops, and I would leave records on consignment, 4 or 5, that was it. And next Monday I'd come by, and the records that they had sold, I'd replenish and they'd pay me for what they had sold. It was a little game with me, and I loved it because it was part of music, and that's what mattered to me. So I learned how to sell records, learned how to make records, but it was all in the ear. So I learned through the years that I used to be mixed up where I thought the singer made himself, but I found out later on that it was the song that makes the singer, it makes the artist, and the artist is about the 3rd or 4th man on the totem pole. The promotion man behind the desk is the one that makes the artist and the whole damn thing roll along. Because without a good promotion man, a good promotion company, you'd have nothing. If you had a good can of peanut butter and didn't have no way to merchandise it, then you'd be in trouble. So that same thing goes with records. You can have the greatest singer, the greatest song, and everything going for you. If you don't have a man that's behind the telephone and telling the radio station this best damn record that you've ever heard, if you don't buy it, the world may end tomorrow. If you don't play, the world may end tomorrow. And you have to have that man. He's the one that makes your records go. Is the promotion man. He is the most important one. So no matter what record company you ever end up with, make sure you get close to the promotion man. Without him, you're out in the street right back where you started. I worked very hard in the days when I started. You went around to where they had an antenna sticking up. I used to drive around, and wherever the antennas out of the trees was, I stopped and visit my friends and said, maybe he'll play my record. And I was always one that never did start by going bugging the hell out of the #1 big station in the city. Because he's like people, I call them credit card promotion men. They come in from different big cities, and they come in just go see the #1 program director, #1 radio station. They get out to lunch and get the plane, go back to New York or whatever it's from, which is nothing to do with personalities, okay? But what I'm trying to say is that in promoting records, if you want to do them on your own label, and sort them out, and we're talking about your own label, not starting off with a major, you have to go around and get the outlying areas. You're going to have to get the guys that's willing to play your records and that are willing to see you, man. They'll be happy to see you, that nobody comes visit them. So that once you get that going, there's a lot of outlying areas, then you can take your turkey to town to the big radio station, you know, and say, well, hell, man, I got Rosenberg, I got this place about in dead selling records, and bring you a proof of it. And then that man won't mind going to his boss, and because most of them are being programmed by consultants from different cities, which is not right, but this their business is not mine. But the consultants will let them put on the record, maybe 1 or 2 records of local talent a month, maybe, at some stations. Some of them they won't, but most places will. They won't tell you that because they want you to bug the hell out of them, but don't ever give that up. You got to remember that a license for radio station is to help the local community, and sometimes the radio station managers need to be reminded of that, you know. They're not made to just play, LA or New York records, they're made to play Texas records, you know. And you young people that I'm looking at out here today need to have that back in mind, and you need to remind the station, be nice about it, you know. Don't start being a rear end about it. Just go in there and say, man, help me out, I'll live here, you know. I got a good record, the quality's good. If you don't think, I don't say, well, the quality ain't good enough because you ain't recorded in New York, you know, that's bullshit, all right? Don't ever let that. They're just trying to be nice to you. I like to take my records and tell them, well, get mine out, and you pick out the best one you got right there. Let's put them together and listen to them, you know? Because I believe in my sound, I believe in my records, and I've had over 50 gold records, I'm very proud of it. And they've all been cut in Texas and Louisiana. And I've sold millions and millions of records. I made millions of dollars. I screwed them all off, went back, made some more. I did it all my life. But it's you can make it. You can make it only in America that you can do that. Where you have start on zero and you can be a very wealthy man nowadays in the record business. Very wealthy, guaranteed. Yeah, you can become very important nowadays. You have the Narcotics Bureau, first big check you put in the bank, he'll come see you. But IRS is gonna come see you. Everybody gonna wonder where the hell you make this money all of a sudden, you know? But that's no record business, you know, there's one business left in America where you can still do that. You can still do your own thing. No other country you can do that in, but you can do it here. And the thing to do is when you believe in something, it goes back to the basics, you know. Faith and determination is a powerful thing, you know. If you believe in yourself, you believe in your song, you believe in your work, don't ever let nobody tell you you're not going to make it. And just stick in there with it, man. Keep turning that crank, someone come out of it sooner or later. And I've got, and you have a lot of friends around Austin, Texas that has made it. That go Big Ed and them over there. I remember me and them sitting at that Sugar Hill Studios. I was the engineer and lost my girlfriend, crying in my beer 3 in the morning, cutting records, but we did pretty good anyway. And he's done well, and I want to congratulate. I'm very happy. Some people, you know, when their friends have hit records, they get jealous of them. I don't. I am very happy to see somebody have hit records from my territory, my country, because it's hard. And it's not easy, but it can be done. There's the one that won't give up. And, you know, that's Carlos Grasso, Patoski, old friend of mine, Major. She did very well. And a lot of guys in town. It's been 18 years since I've been back around. I see Kim up here with the cameras. I see Professor John over here. They're all smiling and looking good. Father Time's been good to them. And I'm glad to see everybody do well. And you can if you want to. Remember, the song is the key to everything. And the next thing is having a lot of balls to walk in the radio station and say, hell, I'm good. My shit's good, man. Don't tell me it ain't. You know, don't let nobody tell you that way. And that's about all I got. I stay here and talk all night. I've been here 30-some odd years in business, and I stay here and tell you stories you won't even believe all night long. But anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you thank you for being here today. And I'm also asking if you got any questions that you might want me to answer. I'd be glad to answer. If I can answer, I'd be glad to. So any of you might have, we'll take a little time out here, and one might want to ask a few questions, I'd be glad to.
Okay, Huey, with more than 50 gold records, aside from really consistent promotional effort, what one or two characteristics were consistent through all those records? Why do you think those particular ones hit gold and the others didn't?
Well, I think, next I go back to the song, but a hit record usually is a hit from the first note that it hits. It's like it's got a sixth sense to it. I can be driving down the highway, listen to a record of some kind come on, I usually tell you. I used to go set up at pressing plants, and before they even had towers, it was just a test pressing. They had no towers, they just want to see how the master came out. I used to just love that, sit there and listen to records, and I had a knack for picking out the ones that would become hits, you know. And I'd even call guys and told them they had a hit and didn't know it. I remember I called Major Bill Smith. I had went in there and he had Bruce Chanel's "Hey Baby" years ago in the pressing plant. Wasn't doing nothing. He wasn't even working it, you know. And I called him up and I said, "Hey Major," I said, you know, I guess I was crazy. I used to promote records I loved, and I didn't even know who the people were. I'd bring them around to radio stations because I loved them so much, and I think the world should hear it, you know. And so then I called the Major up, and I said, "Hey, you got a hit record?" "What record?" You know, he had 2 or 3 pressed, and I said, "It's Hey Baby," and I said, "You already worked there." I said, "It's a good record. Send me some copies and I'll work it." And I went out and broke the record for him, and he followed through it and had quite a number more as I did many other people. But I love music so much of that. I have no idea, Rod, what makes a record. I go by the feeling from the first note of the record and the song that it flows. It's probably a magic moment that happens there, because I've seen me say, "Well, we'll go remix this again," and never could mix it as well as the first mix was done. Even though they had a couple mistakes, and I'd settle for that before. The remix it, you'd lose it in the remix. And sometimes it's just a magic thing that happens at that particular moment when you mix that one song that you can't capture again. You can come back 2 weeks from now and lose it. So that I always try to say my first mixes, because you go around asking people, "What do you think about this mix?" And everybody's got a different ear, got a different heart, and feel different things. So they would say, "Well, I think I'd put this guitar those there. I think I'd put a new guitar in here, you know." And then the next guy down the street, "Well, I don't like the drumming right here." Next thing you know, they want you to cut the whole damn thing again. You got like too many A&R people around. So go by your first impression, your first instinct. If it feels good to you, settle with that, and take it to market. Anybody else? You got it? Oh, I think he made with 45. It's back to the days with 45. You needed 45 to make an album now. And you can still make it with albums, you know, but I think 45's, that's maybe an old way of thinking, but I think 45 is still a stepping stone to having a big album. And try to have, instead of cutting for just one 45 on the album, try to cut the whole album where you have everything on the other side. You got to cut 40 sides to get 5 or 6 great sides on the album. You know, try to stick with that instead of just saying, "Well, I got one that's a bitch, man, it's a smash," you know, and the rest of the album, you know, people, they play the first song, and after that, you've had albums you bought like that, and I put out a couple of you play one song, the rest of them throw it away, you know. That's where I learned from it too. So you always try to cut a lot of sides where you're gonna have at least 5 sides in there that can be great singles. They'll make you a monster. They'll make you a $5 to $10 million sale album. You consider, you know, try to concentrate on doing more than one hit in one album. And that'll lock you in on the album, and you act too. It'll make you act for you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Huey, your original record
Yeah, you know what? I must have 15 or 20 labels. I'm gonna explain that to you. That's when payola first come in, right? If they had too many crazy Cajun records at one radio station, well then Uncle Sam might come and say, "What the hell are you doing? You know, you and this guy know each other good or something, you know?" Right? So I said, "Well, I got to figure a way around this book, you know." Uncle Sam, you always got to figure a way around it some kind of way. He got your number, you know. So I said, "Well, I'm just gonna change the label." I put out different name labels, and that way when you see them on the charts, well then he never figured out they all belong to me. But those were the days when payola first come in. And payola's come a long ways now, you know. It's even in Washington, it's in college football, it's down at the Bears office, everywhere. We love them, you know. But I'm glad they found the understanding, you know. They put me through a few changes and stuff a few years ago. And I'm glad they found the understanding that that's our system of government, man. You're always going to have to pay for the play. You're going to have to do a favor for a favor, and I love it. I love it. I love it. So that it never bothers me, but it kind of makes me want to pull a little shirt I've been wearing for 3 days up here and say, well, you know, I wasn't the only one doing it in church. They were just hiding in the closet. You know, it took them all these years to come on out front with it, you know. Anyway, does that answer your question, right? Anybody else? Yeah. In fact, you know, if you go out and sell anywhere from 5 to 12, 15,000 records, you know, and have your documented sales and stuff, where you're selling it at, the record shop that are ordered, well, any major label will give you a good deal. And it all depends on, I don't want to put cards to all this stuff. It all depends, you know. I know the guys that I've been dealing with in major labels for years and years, and and my figure on what I want, it all depends on what the look on his face is going to be when I'm looking at it, you know. I knew a guy one time that in New York, one of my best friends, a world-known guy. I could always, you know, it's not a merchandising and selling. I could always go see him and play him something. And I knew when I had him because he would turn his chair around and look towards the record player behind him, you know. My fingers went up just then, you know. I knew he could look at me because, and if you looked at me, you know, I didn't have a deal. I didn't have 5 pieces of product. I didn't have a deal, okay. But next time I'd bring him something, he'd turn that chair around on his back to where my fingers doubled then because I knew I had him. You know, that's what the record did. It's a game, you know. It's a beautiful game, but it's like getting up every morning going to work. It's you know, it's great to be able to play. And America's great, man. It's great to be able to have the chance to make mistakes, you know, and that's what I love. I love about my country, man. I used to just kind of be thoroughly pissed off with America. I don't mind telling you, you know, till I went and visited foreign countries. You know, everybody needs to go there someday, and believe me, I was glad to get back and get my cheeseburger, man. You can get cheeseburgers overseas, and nothing wrong with foreign countries, but they don't taste like they do here for some reason. So I was glad to get to the place where I had a chance they give me a chance to make mistakes. Anything else? I'm glad to answer the question. Do the best I can with it. If you just ask me, like their labels, you know, they'll give you when you sold, they'll give you deals. It all depends on what kind of deal maker you are. You know, you can run your points up, you know, from some to some. Good chance, but they'll call, this will cost them some money. I said that, but you don't understand. I love him. Let's talk about him. Your points on, you can always say, well, we'll give you, how many albums you want? Well, you need to bump your albums up. You know, you say, well, give me a boost, give me more points as we go, more albums, more sales, more stuff. You don't understand what I'm talking about, you know, but he's on the other end, he has to play his game too, you know, but they'll give you, most record comes I found to be very fair. You have to have a good lawyer. You know, and they have good lawyers, good accountants, good CPAs. But you get them two together, they'll cost you a lot of money because by the time they get through doing the lawyer's dance, you know, they're going to charge you. My lawyer sent me a bill. He made a phone call that I called him and told him to make it. Charged me $175 for the phone call. He pays us 1 hour, so he gets paid by that. But on the other end, when I do get my hit records, I make more money, so he pays away very well. So that, but you have to have a good attorney, those copyright laws and the record business. If you don't, you can have gold. I used to have gold records and had to hitchhike to the grocery store. That's how bad it was. You know, I never made any money. I got a hell of a kick out of watching my acts on the American Bandstand in Philadelphia in them days. And I was busy cutting hair in the barber shop, and I said, shit, man, that's a great feeling, man. Look, my Ike's up there singing my song, all these good things. But I didn't have no money, didn't have no car. And one day I finally realized I wasn't an attorney, and I wasn't a CPA, and I wasn't smart as I thought I was. So I divided and farmed out that to the people that's that profession, and that's when I started making money. Anything else? I'd be glad to answer. C'est bon? All right. Which one?
I just can't resist telling you that you said you didn't know how to make speeches.
No.
I've heard speeches all over the country on every subject, and you did great.
Yeah. I thank you very much. I just tell about things that I've lived and all been experiences, so every bit of it's true. And we thank you, we love you, and don't give up the music business.
Our next speaker, opening up the South by Southwest Conference, is a guy who sort of epitomizes something that used to be around in the old days while being firmly with both feet in the current scene. Once upon a time, record companies believed that something unusual might actually make some money. They believed that things didn't have to be stamped out of a cookie cutter and be just like the stuff that's happening right now. They weren't Xeroxing the hits, they were actually taking some chances. Of course, a hit doesn't hurt, and it's good to know how to make one happen when it starts making some noise. I think we're very lucky to have the Vice President of IRS Records here today. IRS being, a label that has had mega platinum acts like the Go-Go's and is still working real hard to develop the smaller acts. And here in Austin, we've seen them do the same thing with Timbuk 3. That'll be our next panel. In fact, the Timbuk 3 panel members should meet with me down on this corner here after this segment is over. Right now, I'd like to introduce and welcome to South by Southwest and Austin, Carlos Grasso from IRS Records.
Thanks, Thanks, everybody. Huey, you're a real tough act to follow. So I'll try, so I'll keep it dry and somber. Anyway, I think part of the reason, like Ed said, that I'm here is a result of why this convention exists. And it had to do with a lot of the people who live here, who really care about the music scene here, bringing me here. I didn't wake up one night, in a spiritual revelation and decide, well, Austin is the promised land and I gotta go there and find some bands. It was the efforts of Ed Ward's and Joe Nick's, Don Radcliffe's, and a lot of other people in this town that cared so much about this scene and felt so strongly that gap between the industry and the music scene here needed to be closed, that by bringing a TV show here and helping to expose some of these bands, that maybe that would help. And a result of all this, after listening to, hundreds of tapes and badly in need of a beer, I went into a little bar and saw Timbuk 3, and they got signed, and the rest is, well, the rest. And the point of it is that it can happen. It didn't happen to every band here, because not all bands deserve it. But Austin is a very, very special place. And it is special because it's got a lot of soul. And I think that's something that the record industry can't manufacture anywhere, not in any city. And it's why a city like this will continue to deliver the kind of acts that will keep the industry revitalized. Because, believe it or not, right now the industry is kind of in a bad shape. It's once again become a bloated, greedy monster that really, it's bent on instant gratification. And prior to 1976, I don't know, maybe you remember, which was the beginning of the new wave. It was real stagnant, all the dinosaur bands and music that just didn't make sense, and everything was pretty boring, and record companies spending tons and tons of money, and really basically nobody getting anywhere. And that brought on this new anger and the new wave. And I think the only disturbing thing now is that now in 1986, we got the advent of new age, an oral quaalude. And that kind of is distressing to me, because the industry needs constant new blood. It needs to have all those musicians out there and all those bands that are really making a difference, that are really being original, that are going to shake things up, because people like to feel safe. And the industry right now doesn't want to take a lot of risks. And I don't want to universally condemn it, because there's a lot of bands and a lot of things are happening that are really great. But there should be a higher percentage of those things happening, and it's not, because they're not listening. And the point of this is that it is up to you people, and it's up to all the musicians here, and the creativity inherent in them, that is going to keep that lifeblood going, because it really is so necessary. And it's not just, what good can come out of this is not just an exposure to the industry, or to the people into the industry, but to the right people into the industry, because you really have to get connected to the people who care, and the people who are going to believe in you, because those are the people that are really going to help take you to the top. And it's not just going to be, we're in a situation right now where, particularly a lot of it in LA and in a lot of other places where, a little band comes up and some A&R guy somewhere smells something really happening, and before you know, you got 48 A&R guys from everywhere all bidding each other, and never once sitting down and asking each other if the app was any good. And it results in a lot of the crap music that ends up getting put out, and it's not fair and it's not right to a lot of the musicians that there are in this country, and specifically in this city. And like I said, they're not all going to get signed, they're not all going to make it. But each artist has to remain firmly in control of their own career from step one all the way down to the deals and your lawyer and what it is you're going to do. And never let those guys out there tell you any different. This is what you got to do to be more commercial, to sell more records, because they're listening to an accountant somewhere down the line who's looking at that bottom line and really doesn't give a shit about who the artist is. They have a different commitment to it, but that's not what the business is all about. It's about creativity and about music. And it's why I feel so strongly about Austin, Texas. And I heard a few things that, after we did the show down here, and a few people from other companies came down and checked out the scene, and well, there's just not that many other good bands, so let's just go away. Well, that's because they're looking at it from will this thing sell immediately? And that isn't always the case, and that isn't always the way it should be. A lot of times it is a long, hard road, and not necessarily to the top. But like I said, the point of all this is that hopefully a convention of all this won't be just a lot of people flapping their gums and hanging around the bars, which is fine, but that the musicians are the ones that are really benefit out of this, and that as long as they keep their vision, that a city like Austin, Texas will continue to deliver the kind of goods that people in the industry like myself can continue to be excited about and to help develop and to help break. And I hope you all enjoy yourselves and ask a lot of questions. And don't be afraid of the people out there in LA and New York. I mean, there's a lot of highly paid people who make the wrong decisions. And if they're doing that, I mean, you got just as much a chance to get in there and get exposed as anybody else. And you should take advantage of that. And thank you.
I have a few announcements to make. And then we're going to have the panel on Timbuk 3. First, some of these are of general interest and some of these are of minor interest. For all the panelists who are going to be doing any of the 12:30 to 2 p.m. panels, which include Band 101, Alternative Radio, or Music Industry Contacts, instead of meeting upstairs at the mini suite, the panelists meet in the barton room on the 4th floor to get ready and discuss what they'll be doing at those panels. We'll be done here at about 11:30, quarter to 12, and then there'll be a break until 12:30. So during that time, can all the panelists please meet in the barton room? Let me explain to you how the rooms are going to be divided here so that you just look at the physical layout. When we're done here, they're going to move a wall down this side of the room. There'll be one room here, there'll be one large room over there, and one small room over there. And we'll have panels in all 3 of these rooms. The Band 101 will be in this room because we think it's going to be that more people are interested in that. The alternative radio and the music industry contracts, one will be in one of the rooms, and one will be in one of the other rooms. So essentially, this will be where all the open panels take place. And let me explain a little bit about the closed professional caucus series. It's not, we don't mean to be exclusive. What that's basically is rather than a kind of open panel and open discussion, it's more designed to be meetings of people who work in that profession. So if you are a talent buyer, or you are a music writer, or you are an agent and a manager, you are more than welcome to come to those workshops. But rather than an open discussion among everybody, which we'll be doing lots of down here, those are designed more to be professional meetings, to talk about common concerns and common problems in those specific areas of the music entertainment business. And anybody in those areas is more than welcome. You don't have to register, you don't have to sign up or anything. You're more than welcome. And those will be taking place on 2 rooms on the 4th floor. All the general meetings will be taking place on this floor. There's one exception to this, which is the record production workshop, which is open to everybody, and now will be taking place on the 4th floor. There was some scheduling problem with this place. I realize this probably sounds extremely confusing, but it is. Today's workshops, the afternoon we'll be offering, I think, 10 open panels, into which you're all invited, plus 5 of these closed workshops. The closed ones are the regional indie labels, and that's for people who are working or have their own labels. The regional music industry development for people who are involved in any kind of music industry development committees or agencies. Talent buyers, agents, and managers, and covering the beat. The open ones, the ones that everybody is invited to, are Band 101, alternative radio, music industry context, dealing with the majors, with or rock, investment opportunities in the music business, record production, dealing with independent labels, songwriters workshop, and music industry business practices. You should all have a schedule. It's in your the material that you've been handed, and if you don't, you can go out to the desk and get one. There's also a trade show. The trade show stretches from this end of the hall all the way out, all the way over there. So if you've just seen this end, there's a lot of interesting exhibits and booths down this hall, and you should make sure to visit those. Also, this is being recorded. All these, in case there's like 2 things you want to see at the same time, a lot of this is being recorded, and tapes will be available for purchase. And you can also inquire about how to do that. I guess where?
At the Marble Bar.
At the Marble Bar, you can inquire as to where you can purchase tapes if you're interested in it. I'm personally going to get Huey's little speech because I think it would go great in the car radio. We also want to, one thing when we did the opening remarks is this conference is being co-sponsored by papers like ours, where I'm with the Austin Chronicle, all across the region. We want to especially welcome those. There are a lot of copies of those different papers are available outside for you to pick up. They're really, for the most part, just exceptional publications. Actually, they're all exceptional publications. Because they've all been terrifically helpful in organizing this and making this not in Austin or not simply a Texas meeting, but a regional meeting for this whole area. And we're really happy about that. And we want to welcome them here. And we especially think everybody should go out of their way to look at some of these papers, especially for the ones that are in your region. Because in terms of what's going on in music, these are frequently the most supportive and most important kind of publications. Okay, I guess that's pretty much it. Let me see if they're ready, and then we'll go on with that panel. Are there any questions about anything in terms of just the way things are going to be going or stuff like that? Okay. Ed, you're on.
Huey, they need to
Yeah, Ed, you guys are on.
What? You're terrible, man.
I get to introduce this panel and they don't even know it. About 2.5 years ago, I have a birthday in October, and there's 2 or 3 guys who have birthdays right around the same time I do. And one of them every year throws a big party, which he then sends the others bills for, because he throws in all our names, which we never quite approve of, and we never pay the bills, so it works out okay. And about 2 years ago, at this party, there's a new band in town that had just moved here from out of state, and he said they were going to play the party. He thought they were really terrific, and we should all go hear them. The band was Timbuk 3. They were in a small room downstairs in this big old house, and they were playing, and I went in and heard them and thought, God, these are really terrific songs. And as soon as they get rid of that beatbox and get themselves a drummer and a bass player, this band could go somewhere. It's that kind of foresight that pays off in the music business. These guys all didn't have that problem. And they went ahead and they worked with this band, and they signed this band, and they managed to break this band nationally. And this is the panel on the Timbuk 3 story. Here's our moderator, Ed Ward.
Moderate.
Well, what we've decided to do is to present the Timbuk 3 story pretty much from the streets to the charts. And so we're going to start off with chronological presentations of the people involved in this story, all of whom are sitting up here. So I will introduce them one by one as their part in the story unfolds. I think the first guy we're going to start with is from the Hole in the Wall, the club up on Guadalupe where it all busted out, Steve Hiltz.
I guess I'm a street level person, street to stars at 15. I first found out about Timbuk 3, I guess it was in the fall of '84. And turned on to invite a friend of mine who's a musician, Dave Scheidel, plays kind of a mix of folk and jazz at the Hole in the Wall about once a month. And he said, go check him out. He had heard him, I think, at the Cactus Cafe, which is moves you out of town as part of the University of Texas Student Union. And he was impressed, and he kept bugging me about them and telling me how good they were. So I said, sure, I'll go out and hear them. And then he made the right move and also sent Barbara down to remind me, drop off a card and remind me of the date and ask me personally to come and hear him. And at that point I couldn't refuse, even though it was at the Austin Outhouse. Which actually I don't mean to put place. It's actually a good place for local musicians because it's where almost everybody gets their first start. Songs you can tell whether something's going to be good or not. So I just went ahead and crossed my fingers and said, I hope nobody minds the jam box and can you play this Friday? And they did, and sure enough, people were saying, where's the rest of the band, and what's that thing on stage, et cetera, et cetera. And the one thing that kind of helped people get over that was to know that a couple things, and explain the situation, that they were responsible for putting down the bass lines and getting the rhythm section together. I don't know how that's done exactly, but I knew that they were the ones who did it. They didn't just sort of have it programmed for them. And that the reason they did this was so that they would have more artistic freedom in the band. The two of them worked well together, and they had problems with previous bands. And they just wanted to be able to step out and do their thing in the style they were accustomed to. And I was really surprised at how fast people got over the idea of a jam box being on the stage. You know, it's supposed to be a live music, and we paid $2. But anyway, after about half hour, that was over and done with. No one cared about it. And by about the third time they played at the Hole in the Wall, it was packed to the gills. And fairly soon thereafter, they started playing more out of town, playing more around town. And then before you knew it, the MTV thing came along, and they were overnight stars. And I guess that's all I'll say for right now.
Okay. Naturally, when they started coming along and getting those out-of-town gigs, Pat and Barbara were smart enough to know that they needed a manager. And fortunately, they found one with his own studio, Mr. Ed Wood.
Thank you. I'll sort of trip through this chronology from my perspective a little bit quickly, and then we'll see where it goes from there. Steve is, as I remember, it's either Steve or Doug, I'm not exactly sure. I think it was Steve, were the first people that told me, you know, there's this great band you should hear. I was in the Hole in the Wall, it's one of my favorite bars, obviously in Austin. And they said, there's a great band you should hear called Timbuk 3. God, what a name, you know? What a name! All of a sudden, you know, my ears were going, it's amazing. And then I sort of forgot about it. I went back in again, we talked about it, I hadn't heard them yet. And they mentioned it again, said the band's really going great, people are coming to hear them, it's great, you know, they're really popular. They do this strange thing with a jam box, you know, it's only 2 people. And my ears are going, what, 2 people? You know? And I saw immediately a sort of techno-pop, electronic, you know, very synthesized kind of what you'd expect band that used tapes and a jam box and we're only 2 people, you know? And I thought, well, wait a minute now. Here I've got a wonderful recording studio. We do a lot of electronic music. I have a synclavier. I'm really oriented to that kind of stuff. It's a happening thing to do. I'll call them. I'll find them, you know? Maybe they'd like to buy some studio time. Or maybe even I can produce it. I don't know, you know. I want to get in touch with them. But I forget about it because, you know, talk is cheap and you get busy and blah, 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 blah. So I'm in the studio one day, phone rings. I says, hello? Is Randy Kirchhoff there? No, Randy's not here. He said, well, would you tell him this is Pat McDonald and I'd like to talk to him. This guy who's an engineer, works with us, was doing the booking for a club in Austin. And Pat was calling to try to get a gig. And he knew that he worked at the studio in Lone Star. So I said, no, I'll give him the message. And Pat said, okay, well tell him it's Pat McDonald of Timbuk 3. Who? Whoa, wait, stop. Okay, just a second. And I started this long harangue about how I'd like to hear him, and in fact I would, and please come by, and this, that, and the other. The rest is kind of what you see here, or there, I guess. I heard him, I was fascinated, I realized immediately this guy's a songwriter. And I think an exceptional songwriter. I wasn't too sure about, you know, what he was doing, you know, I couldn't quite understand 2 people in the jam box. I hadn't heard him yet, all I heard is tapes, I never heard him perform. So I said, great, I love it, I'd like to come hear you play sometime. And I went to hear him play at the Hole in the Wall, and fell in love with him instantly. Realized that there was magic there was no gimmicks there was honest, straight ahead, creative energy there, and I decided I wanted to do something with this band. And taking the inspiration from my partner Stan Coppinger, who had just done a record with Dino Lee about 6 months before, I decided I would try to get a record deal for Timbuk 3. And we started the process. We went in the studio, we recorded 4 tunes, or 5 tunes, one of which made it to the record eventually. And I guess the rest is sort of history, or actually not my turn. I guess the rest is next.
It's not over yet.
It's not over, that's right, it's not over. Thank you. I'll stop here and go to Joe Nick, who I went to once I figured out I want to manage these guys, or I should say I want to get them a deal, and the only way to get them a deal the way I thought was to manage them. It's not necessarily the case, obviously. But I went to Joe Nick, who was, and should get all the credit, I believe, and certainly from me, I feel, was the real latchpin for making this work, hinge pin, or whatever it is. Because Joe Nick told me to do certain things that I did that I think were very, very instrumental in helping it through the process that got it to Carl's attention, and from there to where it was going. So I will turn it over to Edward.
Right. So now the next thing is Pat and Barbara, armed with a tape, walk into the office of a guy who's actually gotten a couple of good record deals for local bands, which back when this was happening actually still is somewhat of a rarity. So Joe Nick Patoski will now tell you how he did it.
This was before I took to heart my philosophy of don't give up your day job. I was at the time when Ed Gwynn, an old acquaintance, rang me up I was in the thick of music management, handling 3 acts at the time, and Ed comes in with the tape. He wants me to hear something. He likes this band that he likes a lot, and kind of explains it to me. It's this duo here with a machine backing them up and singing this music that he's discovered at the Hole in the Wall. I'm at the time kind of scratching my head, wondering what's going on here. He played me the tape, and oddly enough, I became quite enamored of one cut in particular, which goes to show in hindsight that I wasn't that smart because it was a cover song. An old Willie Dixon tune called I Want to Make Love to You, and they did it in such an odd sort of way, but it was still, it didn't sound like a mechanical Euro pop rendition. It sounded like something with a lot of feel to it, a lot of soul, just as Willie Dixon performed the song with a lot of soul. And this one cut I kept playing over and over. I loved the way it sounded, and listened to a lot of demo tapes in my office, but this one kind of stuck out. I thought, you know, I don't know about the band or anything, this song could go somewhere. And I think if you bought the English version of Future So Bright, or it's the EP actually, you'd find this cut obscurely hidden away. So, I mean, I had good intentions. I don't think I had the right tune on the Beatles, which goes to show, you know, you think you're smart, but man, it's a pretty dumb decision on my part. Anyhow, I heard this cut and I really loved it, and I liked the tape too. And at one point, when I heard that Carl Grasso and IRS were coming to town to film the Cutting Edge show for MTV, he had asked me, we got in touch with one another, and he asked me who was worth putting on this show. Is there anybody I had in mind? And of course, I pitched all 3 of the acts I was working with. And I don't know if it's foolishness or good-heartedness or whatever. I shot him some other tapes of people I wasn't working with that I'd heard and I liked. And one of these was Timbuk 3. This was one of about 6 or 7 different tapes that I'd sent him. And I said, these people are probably worth checking out. And to be honest with you, at the time, as much as I liked this one cut, I didn't think, you know, Carl Grasso from IRS, which I'd associated as a so-called new wave label or new music label, would really be interested in this kind of thing, but it interested me. Well, lo and behold, Carl came down here on a scouting. Well, actually, it was when you were getting the taping, the night before the taping, I thought. Was that the scenario, or did you come down earlier and hear them?
Yeah, I'd come down.
He came on a scouting mission anyhow, and I know when he was in the hotel and John T. leaked out that Carl Grasso was here looking for bands to put on television. Carl Grasso was hit up by every Tom, Dick, and Harry in town that had a tune. And I think he was given over 40 tapes in a matter of a half a day at his hotel, and no one really knew where he was staying, so I thought that was pretty great. But anyhow, in Carl's travels around town, he did manage to hit just about every club where there was live music, and one of the clubs he hit was the old Roadhouse on 6th Street, where Pat and Barbara were playing, and the night after he had done this, I heard him babbling that this is a great band. I think I heard someone I really want to put him on the show, in Timbuk 3. And I kind of thought, oh, that's interesting, because as much as Austin gets the rap of a lot of the music communities here are very cliquish, the new music crowd doesn't always necessarily spill over to the rhythm and blues crowd, doesn't necessarily spill over to the roots rock crowd, and the country crowd, and so on and so forth. This was a band that didn't seem to belong to any particular clique, and particularly the clique that I thought I'd perceived Carl Grasso and IRS would be looking for. So it was kind of like, it was surprising, but I thought it was pretty encouraging too, that here's a guy that's willing to go out of bounds, that IRS and Carl Grasso are not looking for a narrowly defined philosophy as far as music goes. And here they said, we're going to put this band on Cutting Edge show. And even at that time, out of a lineup of about 10 acts, they struck me as probably the least likely to be on there and the least likely to succeed. And they were kind of the odd people out. Well, he heard things in that music, and I know that the producer he brought down with him, Dennis Herring, heard different things in that music than maybe a lot of local people did. Needless to say, they heard the right things, and it was not necessarily a Willie Dixon song either. And I'm going to jump ahead just a second so I can get out of the way, because my involvement in this was peripheral. It was something good that I was just passing along the line. That after there was interest expressed by IRS, Ed Wynn came back to me and said that there's a possibility there's going to be a deal go down. And pardon?
And help.
And help. And this was one point where I've seen a lot of so-called local acts, once they see someone's calling with a dozen roses in their hand and their checkbook open, everybody all of a sudden freezes up and they start saying, well, what about giving up this or this, or they're asking for too much, or they're not going to pay me enough. And my general reaction then, and I think it applies to anyone on this level, if you can solicit label interest, was that you have another offer. Are you getting into a bidding war or not? No, this is the offer, and IRS wants really bad. They also wanted certain things as far as how long the contract was for, how much the advance was for, and wanting an involvement in publishing. A lot of bands, a lot of composers, as soon as someone wants a piece of the publishing, they'll freeze up and say, no, that's mine, I can't give it up. Well, you learn real quick in the business that as many people as you can get involved in your project, the better. And in that respect, giving up a piece of publishing or involving IRS on a publishing basis as well as a recording basis, to me, my reaction was, this is your offer, this is your best deal. I think you should take what the offer is instead of holding out or getting into a bidding war, simply because my philosophy is, if you keep all your stuff, you got 100% of your publishing, and your record never sells, you get 100% of nothing. If you have to give up, let's say you give up 50% of your publishing on the deal, if you have a hit, 50% of a couple $100,000 is a hell of a lot more than 100% of nothing. And no one ever wants to hear the story about how you kept your publishing but you never made it. If you did a mistake early on, if you felt like you gave up too much, if you succeed, everybody's ready to pat you on the back and sympathize and say, oh, that's too bad, maybe you should renegotiate. And if you're successful, you can renegotiate these things. But if you start getting paranoid and trying to keep too much of your action at the expense of querying the deal, no one's going to want to hear your story anyhow. So basically, at that point, the one thing I advised Ed was do the deal, work out if there's points that need to be worked out, fight for those points, but don't queer the deal. Do the deal, and you can kick yourself in the ass later on. And I don't think that they're kicking their ass themselves in the ass today.
Okay. Well, my involvement in this is even more peripheral than Joe Nick's, so I'll be real brief. But one of the things that I do want to bring in here that will be of interest to people in all manner of regional scenes is how I got in touch with IRS in the first place. For the last couple of years, although it's been suspended at this point, the Austin Chamber of Commerce, through the Visitors and Conventions Bureau, has been seeking a way to promote Austin music through the tourist trade and outside of the city limits, as well as to develop a way to attract people into the clubs. There's a significant number of people who've moved here in the last 5 years who aren't really aware of Austin as a music scene. Now, I don't remember what it was that brought me to Los Angeles, but I do know that Carrie Baker, who is the publicist, the head of publicity for IRS Records, told me that because they don't have MTV in Los Angeles, They have press screenings of the cutting edge so that the local press can see it. He said, I think you're going to like this one. It's around the South Carolina scene. I thought, oh, that's good. You know, Let's Active. That's one of my favorite bands on IRS. I'll go take a look at this. So I went down to this press screening, and well, to be perfectly honest, there was some good music on that. But what I noticed was that the cutting edge crew had put an awful lot of effort into documenting something that I don't think was quite ready to be documented. So I was feeling sort of cocky, and I walked up to Kerry and I said, man, you know, if you're going to put this much effort into producing a show like this, you ought to come down to Austin, because I think we got better bands than this, and I think we got a lot more color and a lot more stuff that would be of interest to your viewers. And he said, well, go talk to this guy over here. He's the guy that is actually in charge of the program. His name is Carlos Grasso. So I walked over and I shot my mouth off to Carl. And he said, well, gee, okay, we'll do it. Then I had to come home and tell the Chamber of Commerce that I had somehow managed to drag all these people from LA down here, and that they were coming down, and that we were going to get ready for a stampede of crazed fame seekers looking for a spot on MTV. It became quite a circus. But we were very, very fortunate in having the Chamber of Commerce actually subsidize a piece of this action. They helped get hotel rooms and rent-a-cars and airline transportation. I think the point that would come out of this from my angle that would be of interest to the majority of you people out there is that putting together a situation like this, a promotional thing through your local Chamber of Commerce or other business type organization, something you might want to think about. If you do have a viable scene wherever it is you live, and I know in New Orleans and in Memphis and in several other places around this country, they started looking into this, and to some extent they're using Austin as a model, and to some extent we caught some links off of them. It's worth thinking about, because when you're organized, even if there is a cliquish sort of situation, as Joe Nick noted that there is here in Austin, you can unite those cliques to a certain common purpose. And if the whole promotion works, then everybody gets a piece of it. And that's something that I think is well worth, you know, laying aside selfish differences for, if you can swing it. Now, I know sometimes it's real hard, but it's very definitely worth thinking. I think that the sort of united front that we all presented when they came down here made it easier for them to do the job they did. Not all of us agreed with the selections of the bands that they put on. Not everybody liked the show. That's not the point. The point is, it made some noise and people heard the word. And one of the words they heard was Timbuk 3. So now we'll just turn it over to Carl, who can tell us a little more about how that part came about.
Well, I didn't know any of this about all this story up until now, because what I ended up with was just, well, first of all, I mean, I'm not an A&R guy. I'm head of creative services for IRS, and I produce the show, The Cutting Edge, was on once a month, and essentially deals with new acts. And it's exactly like Ed said. He came out there and said, you ought to do a show on the Austin music scene. I said, great. Well, I might have even said, gee. And I immediately started receiving a bunch of tapes from Joe Nick and Ed and Don Radcliffe and a few other people. And out of all of those, that tape, when I had, 30 riding around in the car, I was listening to them, and that particular one, Timbuk 3, I didn't know anything about the jam box or anything. Something about it that just stuck out for whatever reason. It just kind of hit me in a certain way. And when I went down there to look at all these bands, it's like Joe Nick said, I went to the Roadhouse and stopped in there with Ed Ward actually, saw the band and fell in love and said, well, they got to be on the show. And told them, look, I'll go back and I'll give it to the powers that be and see if they're interested in signing you guys, but I'm 100% behind this and I'll do everything I can to help it out. And we subsequently came down here, shot the show. I think a lot of the other bands that were on kind of were turning their heads and looking at these guys going, Timbuk 3, Timbuk who? And as a result, they were brought out to LA. Chairman of the board, Miles Copeland, saw the band, loved them, called them in the next day, offered them a deal. And off it went. And it worked out great for everybody. For me, I ended up designing the cover and directing the videos and overseeing the marketing of the act and helping in that way. And but in the meantime, obviously in there, before any of that could happen, a record had to be made. I mean, they had a lot of songs, but it had to be produced. It had to be packaged together in order for that waiting public to devour it, which is exactly what they've done. And I think with that, I think we should probably move on to...
Right. And so, another thing I think that a lot of local bands and beginning talent fail to recognize is that as good as your live act may be, it's not a record. There is really a bit of magic involved in making a record, and there's a lot of hard work, but the main thing is, a record is something that you have to experience identically over a number of times. It's not like a live show. Live show is always different. So getting the feel that you get from a live show onto a piece of vinyl is a very difficult thing. I think that Timbuk 3 was very lucky to have Dennis Herring as a producer, and he's going to tell us about how he made it a hit, won't you?
Well, thanks. My involvement with this came through IRS. They flew me down to see this cutting-edge tape that Carl's doing. Because they were so excited about all these different bands, especially one, which wasn't Timbuk 3. And so I came down and saw Timbuk 3 on the show and was blown away. So we went on and we started at that point talking about a record, how we do one. I had a lot of thought and honest concern that it turned out really right for them. And luckily enough, they got involved with a record company that was real responsive to what they're all about, and they actually got signed, which I really was surprised about in itself. I thought they were so unique, and I loved them, but I go, how are these guys going to get a record? It's like, nobody signed this. I think it's so great, but so we holed up in my basement, consequently, for a couple months, and in my house in Los Angeles, and made this record, and we were real proud of it when we were done. We thought we'd really gotten at what we wanted to get at with it. I did, and they did. And luckily, a lot of people liked it and stuff, so I guess that's about that.
Yeah, okay, at this point, for about the next 20 minutes, we're going to open the floor to questions. What you'll do is I'll recognize each one, and if it's at all possible for you to get over to that microphone that's about halfway down that aisle.
I wanted to, first before, with the record company there, when the tapes were going around, and I was trying to get everybody vibed up, the president about the band, and like, look, Jambox, these guys are great. Our company is about developing acts and about developing bands, and we never really expected this record to